Price is what you pay, value is what you get. Warren Buffett. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your hostess, Shamiza Ali, and it is a pleasure being here with you this evening. Good evening to everyone joining us on Facebook and on YouTube. Tonight's topic is developments and challenges in housing and treatable water. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Professor Mahindra Hariraj.
Good evening, Shamiza, and good evening to all our viewers.
Good evening. Our panelist is Professor Narayan Prasad, and he will join us shortly. Our guest tonight is the Minister of Housing and Water, the Honorable Collin D. Croal. Good evening, Minister. Good evening. Welcome, everyone.
Good evening to you. Good evening to your listeners. It's a pleasure to join you this evening.
Thank you for being here.
Minister, good
Mahindra,
evening.
go ahead.
It's wonderful to see you here and taking time off from your busy schedule, as Guyana and everyone across the length and breadth of the world, not necessarily Guyana alone, knows your portfolio and ministry is very comprehensive. So this evening, I would like to compartmentalize our discussion. And first, my question would be, our direction of this conversation is to provide us a summary or an update on the housing sector, in particular, how much accomplishments that would have been made for completion of projects, future projects, and as it relates to allocation of house lots, etc. And one of the topical thing is the single window initiative that I know you have been working assiduously to achieve.
Sure. So maybe what I'll do, I'll dissect the housing program, what some of the initiatives that we have, and then we can go into details as you ask. So there are many mandates for us under the Ministry of Housing. Commonly, most persons, what they know about is the allocation, and that's what they pay attention to. But there are a lot more activities and initiatives that we engage on. So in terms of the allocation of house lots, too, we have a mandate of 50,000. We are about 31,075 to date. And so that will tell you that we have, maybe a 19,000 more to go. And yes, we will achieve that. So we are on track. We have a number of areas that we are conducting allocations in. And the allocations are across all the regions. It's not just, as people or persons perceive sometimes as Region 4 initiative or just a Region 3. So we can go into the details. We're doing well in our allocation exercises. Then we also have, as part of our initiative, is the construction of houses. Now, the manifesto commitment is for allocation of residential lots. Our manifesto, in fact, speaks to 10,000 annually, 10,000 residential lots annually. That's how we get 50,000. It doesn't speak about the construction of houses, etc. But our president has added that as part of our mandate, and in a number of regards, it's to helping the drive for home ownership. We have had to cost, though, because over time to even review the cost at which our houses are being constructed. So it's not for profit making for the ministry, but it is we go through a tendering process, but it is simply just to break even for the contractors. And so we have so far we have constructed an over initiative of 3,000 houses. We have completed more than 1,000 in regions 3, 4, 6, and 10. And I can go into some of the areas we have done housing. So we have various categories of houses that we have built. We have the low income. Then you have, for the middle range, a number of moderate middle income houses. And then what you know as the young professional houses. Those are for the high income. And we have done this, for example, in Region 4 in areas such as Cummings Lodge. Right now, we're doing young professional houses at LBI. And then we have a number of areas in East Bank that have been impacted: Prospect, Perseverance, Diamond, etc. We also had at Region 3, we have a number of houses that we're constructing uh, over in the Lenora, Edinburgh area. And then subsequently, we have at Region 6, we have an area called Ordnance Fortland. So that's when you're crossing the Berbice. When you cross the Berbice Bridge, if you're going, just look to the right-hand side, you see some lovely buildings up there. It's very much visible from the road access for the bridge. So we have over 100 houses we have constructed. And then over at Hampshire, we've done some more. And then we have Region 10. We've already started an area in York for construction of houses. The Silica City, we've heard a lot about Silica City. So Silica City, we have already cleared the land for the construction of the first 100 houses, purely young professional houses. And the contracts have already been awarded to contractors for those construction. And similarly, we are looking to have this initiative in other regions. Then we have, as part of our housing program, is to address the aspect of, yes, you allocate, but then you have to speak about security of tenure. And here I'm talking about your ownership, whether it's certificate of title or for transport, depending on the land where it is. So we, for example, have processed close to 10,000 of such ownership documents. But much more will be done during this year because a lot of the areas that persons were not able to access as a result of the allocations that we have done, the new areas, and I'll go into the new areas. We are now begun the process for ownership. So that is one of our focus. Of course, development of the new housing areas is part and parcel of our allocation exercises. Because we can't speak about allocation if we don't talk about new areas. Land is of the access for land, the ability to be able to acquire new lands, because we're competing with other sectors too. Government has massive development in all communities and across our country, and likewise for other sectors. So whether it's agriculture for land use, that plays a major role. So some of the areas that we've been able to advance. So for example, Region 3 on the west coast of Demerara, and very shortly exactly 2 weeks from today, we will be allocating in a new area for Wales. Wales, predominantly is known as sugar land. So we have a new area for Wales that we'll be allocating. And then similarly, we were able to get additional lands on the east coast of Demerara because of the consolidation of Gaisuko. Gaisuko is focused in Region 6. That's why I have a shortfall in Region 6, because Region 6, we're trying to get more lands there because many of the lands are leased. Likewise, you also have competing interests, not just for sugarcane, but then in Region 6 has competing interests for cattle rearing and agriculture use in general. In fact, you'll know that there's always some conflict with rice farmers as well. Like, for example, in places like Blackbush, etc., compete with neighbors between rice farmers and cattle rearers. And that's a perennial issue in Berbice. So we've been working to get additional land. Then I also want to speak on what else we've been doing. That is to deal with regularization of a number of new areas, because squatting is something, it's not new. Irregular occupancy is not new. But we have said, as a government, we are not recognizing any new squatting area or development. And we have also said, so for certain areas, it's non-negotiable. So, for example, if you're talking about the riverbanks, sea defenses, etc., that has its own its tenure in terms of for security purpose, to ensure that we do not have breaches, we do not have flooding. So we have to maintain the integrity of the dams. So we have said zero tolerance in that regard. However, there have been a number of areas that we have been able to address in terms of being able to regularize persons where they are. And so regularization is a main activity that's been taking place. For example, even yesterday, you would have seen a similar exercise in Amelia's ward. For over 125 persons, we were able to regularize in that area. By the way, that's an area where squatting was encouraged, but we're committed to that. Then we also have our initiatives for the steel and cement program. You remember this is an initiative that was announced by His Excellency the President, and the subsidy program, and that is for persons who can apply for the foundation for the construction, commence the foundation construction. So we have two categories. We have $6 million and under for one category, and then above 6 million up to $25 million for one category. So that has been progressing well. In fact, we have disbursed over 1,095 vouchers on the steel and cement. We have in value, we have paid off over maybe about over $274 million in value for the steel and cement program. And again, this is an initiative across all regions, regions two to 10. You'll recognize region 3 and 4 um, were the largest area that we have distributed these vouchers. So we have the
Understand.
breakdown. I mean, I can go into that. Then I,
Understand.
pardon me?
I said I understand. Thank you.
Yes. And then I want to update you on the other two legislative agendas that we've introduced that leads to other things. So one, we have completed as a government, we have implemented for the to address the whole aspect about condominiums as well as townhouses, shared users, shared space. Our legislation previously was catered for single ownership, single usage. So you couldn't have duplexes, you couldn't have townhouses, etc. for the approvals. That has been addressed. We have legislated that, and now once you follow the process, there's a process they have to go through. We are okay in that regard. So a lot of investors, a lot of your listeners from the diaspora would have been probably interested in hearing about that. So we've accomplished that. Then you've asked about, quite rightly, the electronic single window processing unit for construction permits. A lot of work has been done in this regard. This is a total transformation that means one, we are ensuring transparency. We are eliminating subjectivity, so nobody can accuse to say it's a request for an approval is sitting at anyone's desk and there's not this responsibility to answer. Because what happens, the process as it is now is that you make an application, you file that manually, by the way, you put in the necessary plans, you show the plans, etc. Our office planning unit receives this, and then it's disseminated to the various agencies that have to give their no objection. And then you're awaiting their feedback, whether it's the local authority, which is a must. So the local authority, whether it is the fire department, because depending on the activity, whether it's for EPA, the Environment Protection Agency, because some applicants or the nature of the activity that they want to embark on will require that, whether it's for the health board. These are all agencies that are involved in approval, giving their no objection. And a report is then generated based on the feedback that goes before the Central Housing and Planning Authority. So sometimes when persons don't know that, they apply here. So they're told, their report is, I'm waiting so many months for an approval for construction. Yes, absolutely, you're correct. You're waiting. But then they don't know the reason is not really solely on the CHPA's domain. So the electronic single window processing unit will mean that there's a single entry point. It goes via a dashboard, and the various agencies are able to log in, and they can put their assessment. It also gives a timeline for a response. So we are currently legislating not legislating, but we're gazetting the regulations. We have already passed the law, so it's into law. To make the other aspect complete is the regulations. So the regulations speaks towards how the timeline by which an agency must respond, and if they do not respond by X time, then it is deemed as no objection. It's deemed as that you're giving your approval. So it brings back here accountability and transparency. So nobody can say that, I need to meet the minister in order to get my application bumped up, those kind of things. Or I need to go to the local authority office to meet some overseer, to meet some meet some city engineer, whoever. No, that has been eliminated. So that
Understand.
so
Yeah,
this is major, and you can be where you are right now and also apply online electronically. So that's the other input that we've had. Now we all recognize though that Guyana has not fully transformed in terms of the full digital age. So you have some of the regional locations that persons who are applying may have challenge to do this electronically. So that's why we still have the manual system that we allow, and we have also facilitate at every local authority with in collaboration with the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, collaboration for their put computer system scanner because you have to scan the documents so it can be uploaded. We put that at all the local authority offices. So persons can actually go there to make their application. Or you can submit manually and our officers will then transfer this to the electronic form. So where are we with that? That is the regulation is currently being gazetted, and we're good to go for implementation very shortly, because the electronic platform that we're going to be introducing, that you'll hear about more in April, which is this month coming. So that
thank you, Minister Croal. Let me just jump in with a question here. And I know you spoke extensively on the overview of the housing sector. Are these measures and framework also applicable to private housing schemes and developments? And after that question, I'll allow my colleague, Dr. Narayan, to raise his question.
it's a single entry point and it's applicable to all. So that's the single point that is going to work. It's you're going towards. And for the fees, so for example, right now, you're paying CHPA, whatever processing. You're paying the local authority for your processing in terms of the plan, etc. You're one entry point, one location. You're paying CHPA. There's a remittance system that has to be put in place so that we can remit the necessary agency. And we have, because you recall when we had brought the bill, the then bill, which is now an act already, when we had brought the bill to Parliament, there was a request to go to select committee, and we agreed. We went to select committee, and that's one of the things that we amended, having gone to the select committee as requested, was to legislate the timeline by which we have to even remit for the respective agency for their fees. So we're not taking away the fees that are normally charged by those agencies. They will obviously provide that information to us, but you'll be paying that at one unit.
Right. So there's still clean financial accountability across
That's
the
right.
board. Dr. Narayan?
Yeah, you any policy, any government policy to succeed must be based on valid assumptions. It is fine what you're saying, that the government has this in place, that in place. Accessibility is an issue. When I talk about accessibility and valid assumptions, you cannot, and any ministry, I'm a Guyanese, I know this, you cannot assume that everybody in need are aware that this is going on in government, that I can apply for housing or I can apply for a plot of land and that I will be well received. What is the government doing to ensure that the people are aware? And you have to take into consideration the interpretive level of the Guyanese population, their understanding of the nuances of government policies. So what, and I hate for you to tell me that this is based on the local people, because I know many of them are corrupt. And so what assurances are there to avoid that and make sure that the people are heard?
So you've asked two sides of it. One in terms of accountability, which was the last part, and then the earlier part in terms of information. So getting to persons being aware, whether locally, diaspora, wherever you are. So locally, let me start with rudimentary, and then I'll come up. Rudimentary, we are a government that is out there. Uh, we both ministers here, we are very much in the field, and there's a reason why, because we try to stay connected to the communities, engaging persons with issues on the ground for problem solving. So that's at a basic level. In terms of the policies, etc., well, we have set up access for applicants. We have set up regional. We have regional offices that are functioning, so no one has to come to the central office here. Every region except two regions, regions 1 and 8, and region 1 very soon will be doing appointing. But every region has an housing office where persons who have housing needs can go to the regional offices and be engaged, make their application, follow up, etc. So there's access from all points at all regional level. So that is in terms of allocations. In terms of, so there's absolutely no need for anyone to be offering any sum of money to anyone out there, because from our level too, we have, if we get complaint, we have been forwarding it to the high authorities, and then the authorities would be the police force. But what happens sometimes, you get persons make an allegation that X has happened. You ask, can you provide some information so that we can act on it? But then they don't want to come forward, so we can't move forward. We have to work on the evidence. We have to work with evidence provided. And we here too, we have changed up in terms even how we are doing allocations too. And that is why we have not been doing allocations willy-nilly. But you will be hearing the publicly, will be, and the vice president even up to this afternoon at his engagement was publicly saying it, and the president has been saying it. We have started allocations at the cutoff point per year. So what we're trying to do is to open the process as far as possible. We've allocated toward 1,000, I said to you, but do you know there's 66,000 pending applicants still? And that means there are persons who will be like crab in a barrel trying to get allocated. So what we have said, with all persons who are 2019 and prior, we are setting up the system that they will be dealt with in terms of a priority or an automatic basis. That is what we're doing right now. That's to deal with what you're talking about, because we're trying to clear the arrears. But on the other hand, sometimes when you hear persons say that they have a very old application, it's not that they have never been dealt with. It is sometimes they refuse the offer that's been made because they're waiting for whatever ideal or specific land to however close to whoever family he or she may have. So they're waiting for that perfect land. So many times the very old applicants have been offered at one time or the other. But having said that, we do receive reports up to last night. Someone would have passed some information to His Excellency of, and he has passed it on to, of making allegations that there's not a house internally at housing, but this is somebody externally who took money for with only the premise that they can help and bump up and help somebody to get an allocation. So that's why we're making it starting with 2019. When we finish dealing with those, then we move up. Of course, that has to go hand in hand with the availability of land. So we can't get land any and anywhere, because it is what's available. That's what we offer. Then, in terms of the diaspora themselves, because we do get a lot of, I travel, and we do engage on the ground too with diaspora. They do give some of these kind of complaints that they get, because frustration whereby you have a matter, it's not dealt with, and they're feeling that in order for it to be dealt with in the cause and in the fair way, or dealt with with expediency, so even for doing your own job, somebody has to be, tipped or something like that. That is those sort of things we don't encourage. But we do act on when we have allegations, when we have complaints, we do act on them. We're dealing with a lot of persons, as I said, and so there's absolutely no need for anybody to be paying anyone. And we have said, if you're aware of any such person, I'm saying this to your listeners, please don't. You don't need to contact here. Absolutely no need. Just engage the Guyana Police Force and say, hey, I have an allegation. I'm aware of XYZ, bribery, whatever is the case, and then they take it from there.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Minister. I
well,
think Dr. Narayan asks a very loaded question, but I want to keep the momentum, but I also want to have a fair bit of time on treatable water, and it's a very important aspect of your portfolio. And I'll allow Dr. Narayan to ask a second question on this topic. But can you give us an update on the water treatment plan situation, investment, as to how many households it will benefit, and what are some of the nuances and challenges you're seeing there? And I'll ask my colleague Dr. Narayan to ask a question once you give us those remarks.
You asked about nuances, but I think your timeline, your tagline, as I mentioned about nuances. They before I come to water, though, if I can mention on housing, because of the magnitude of what we're doing, the reality is we have a contractor capacity challenge, and that's my humble view. And with so you have contractor challenge on one hand, but on the other hand, you also have the labor force issue, because you ask any one of the contractor out there, they'll tell you they're getting a lot of problems with workers, with their laborers. And just use for example, like how this is a short weekend. On Tuesday we're coming back out from a very well festive holiday. Happens, a lot of them not turning up for work on the very next day. They're earning more, no doubt about that. They're all earning more, but there is a shortage of labor in the market, and that is why government is in different ways is addressing this issue. You had a lot of noise in terms of health this week, when permission was granted for 500. But in all of that, not to touch too much on health, but to give you the example, we're setting up 12 new hospitals. You have to have people to we are short already on the current set to deal with what we have. So in order to address, we allow that. And similarly, the large construction companies have also been given permission once they show that they can't be satisfied here. They have been given temporary permission but they have to apply. It's not done in an ad hoc basis to deal with this. Now, so that has been a challenge on the housing sector. We're back to water now. You spoke about treated water, but before we talk about the treated water, I just want to tell you what's happening in the sector, because you go to social media, you'll always see someone complaining about disruption of service. We are creating new housing areas as we speak, because in order to allocate, we have to create new housing areas. So GWI has to keep up in terms of the existing customers, that is to raise the level of service for the existing customers, and then at the same time, on the other plan, to address new areas. So it means new wells have to be drilled. So that is one aspect that we are addressing. But a lot of resources are being pumped into the water sector because we are not satisfied. And that's a fact. And I'm not even speaking about the treated water. I'm talking about all the services that we're providing. We have improved, but we're not satisfied we're at that level. But then we also have challenges too, because a lot of times when you have disruption of service, it's somewhere along the line there's a broken pipe, because you have a lot of construction that is taking place. Let's use East Bank. I just want to use one corridor on the East Bank of Demerara. A lot of times the disruption is because a pipe is broken somewhere and it has not been reported. So X, Y, or Z contractor or the machine broke the pipe. And then the thing is, by us not aware where the leakage, where the breakage is, because we have to go and look for why do we have disruption. So they have to span the area and then to keep working coming in. So that takes some time. So we have had challenges in that regard. But the treated water aspect is, we did an assessment. First of all, when we got into office, we did a comprehensive analysis. What is required to move to 100% access to water by 2025? That is what our overall mandate was for. And also in moving that percentage to 100% access, I'm speaking here of hinterland too, right? What is the complaint? The complaint is, whether I'm in Charity, whether I'm in Crabble Creek, wherever, A lot of the customers complain the water they cannot they're not comfortable drinking it from the tap because of the taste. And likewise, when you look on the wall, if you throw it, keep throwing it, or if there's a leakage on the wall, you'll see the red looks. That's from the rust. So that's water that is untreated. 52% of the population 3 years ago were receiving treated water on the coastline. And when I say coastline, I'm speaking about Charity to Crabble Creek. Well, now I'll have to say Molson Creek. 52%. We have injected the resources. We have received every resource that we have asked, that we presented to Cabinet and to His Excellency. We have received to move in this regard. And so there's a commitment that by next year we must have at least 90% access to treated water. What that means, there are 13 new treatment plants that we're looking at. So there are 12, there are 7 that is under construction. So you saw in the news, website visits were done at Cummins Lodge, Covent Garden, etc. You will go to on the Niming, you see one is going on up there. So there are 7 new ones that is under construction. Those will be completed this year. Then there are 5 that the tender is open now. So it's going through its evaluation phase. This is for 5 new ones, massive. When that is finished, when that is complete in terms of the award, we'll go award to contractors. The completion date is by the end of next year. So I said 13. The other one is the Hope Canal. You've heard His Excellency spoke about this. The intention is, and we're moving quickly in this regard, the intention is you have a constant, reliable supply of fresh water. Why can't we harness this and put it into treatment source and have that be sent out to be distributed along the East Coast where obviously the Hope Canal is? So all the studies have shown, yes, it can be done. We have already cited where best we can put this plant. All of that has been completed. What we are finalizing, therefore, is financing. So right now we are dealing with financing, and once that is complete, then we'll have the tendering, because you have to know the source of funding, because this will be a rollover project. So it's not just this year, because it's a massive project, and that will be 13. And in addition to that, we have a number of inline filters that we're developing. So come by as early as this year, about 75% of the population on the coastline will be getting treated water, moving up from 55%. We're about 55 now. We just moved only about 3%. And so that is what we're working on to directly answer the question. Billions of dollars. On average, one of those treatment plant costs on average, a minimum $2 billion. And each one also has new wells that are being drilled because it is to supply the plants. So at the same time, what we're doing is drilling new wells, new coastline wells. And by the way, we have been having challenges in this regard. That's one of the areas we have had challenges, because the hinterland is much easier to drill, saving and except when the terrain is non-productive. So for example, if you go to Mabruma Region 1, you'll have challenges because the rocky surface. You go to, right now, for example, we've drilled 4 times in an area in Morocco called Warmori. We have been unsuccessful. So these are part of what happens. But generally, in the hinterland, it's much easier for drilling. So we've been moving quickly in that regard to ensure that we can have the 100% access. This
Thank you.
now is compounded, though. We're going through a prolonged dry season. So you are seeing pictures. I mean, from your end, you'll see Kaituro Falls, and you see what it looks like now, right? And that beauty, what's happening now. So that has replicated itself across the country. Rivers that that we traverse, that we require the waterway to access the villages, now are becoming closed off. So it is becoming, well, the CDC has been raising the alert. The Community Development Council, CDC, because to ensure that we have management in that regard. On the flip side of it, because of the dryness, now you also have a lot of bushfires. So if you're traveling around, you will see, well, it's looking hazy, and that's because there are a lot of fires that are happening. We're encouraging persons, do not light any fire, because even if you burn, which you shouldn't be doing, but if you burn the rubbish, the garbage, something will blow and it will catch on to elsewhere. So
Understand.
we,
Let me ask my colleague, Dr. Narayan. I know he's, normally a very well versed person in these areas. So I'll ask him to share his questions here.
Yeah, before I do that, I'd like to. I was happy to hear that you are being aware of some of the issues involved in housing. And I hope that it is being chronicled or categorized so that you know what are the frequency of the issues and wherein lies the problem with regards to housing. And I hope that that your ministry can be able to do that so that it can accelerate the applicants in towards some completion. Having said that, water and housing are so intertwined these days. And in a developing country as Guyana, where modern amenities are slowly proliferating, the use of water is increasing geometrically because of in-house usage. And Guyana, unlike is not this is not due only to Guyana, but the demand is going to be greater and greater. Does your ministry do some have some policies in place so that problems of need and access can be adequately assessed?
we're speaking here about water, right?
Yes.
Yes, good. So, in fact, at GWI level, we do have needs assessment that has been conducted, and even now they do this with in conjunction with housing because, as I said, you have existing areas for where you may have disruption, interruption, or you may have increasing populations, so you need new coverage. And then you also have new areas. So the new areas, that information is being provided by the housing arm because that is part of the planning for GWI, the future planning. And it's a lot of money, I think, and a lot of persons do not recognize that the commitment of government in this sector. I'll give you an example. In 3.5 years in the water sector, we have spent about 25 to 26 billion dollars in the water sector alone. This year we have another 21.7 billion dollars that is budgeted. So we are speaking about, I mean, by the end of 4 years, we'll be talking about $47.5 billion in the water sector. Now, this is done whereby, first of all, when we got back into office, we removed VAT on water. Well, we did that for electricity too. We reduced the tariff by 5% in 2021. We introduced a subsidy for pensioners, whereby the first 10 cubic meter is waived for the pensioners. We did all of this. We are talking about the impact in 4 years. And all of the investment that I spoke about, the new wells, the treatment plants, the changing out of the system, the old pipes that you have. So if you travel around Georgetown and even in the next couple of months, a lot of the you'll see a lot of areas being dug up at the corner because we're changing out transmission lines. Why? Because for us to increase the pressure, we have to have better pipes. We have to increase the capacity. So we have done all of this, and none has been passed on to the customer or the or on our customer base. Absolutely not one of those expenses. And so I make this point to say that yes, you may he read and say, oh, this area is disrupted or this area is not getting water. But government, what we make an injection for electricity to ensure that we bring everything to normalcy. In our case, absolutely by the end of next year, because there's so many things happening simultaneously. So you're not seeing the full impact from these investments yet. Although that's my view, but although in our portfolio review my boss, His Excellency, will tell you otherwise. So he said by now we should be seeing that, right?
See,
Because you
my
have
question,
yes, go ahead.
my question was more focused on consumption based on population density.
Yes.
Like when you call new schemes, the issue is the consumption will increase exponentially with every new scheme if you're going to modernize the amenities for Guyanese. And I was just wondering if your ministry is undertaking or has undertaken any kind of analysis to assess consumption based on the residential density.
Any commercial, because that will have a different type of consumption too.
Right.
Yes. Yes. The answer to that is yes. Yes. In fact, we have color coded map that from GWI that they produce, so we can color code because the estimate that you will use for a residential will be different for maybe when you're talking about a commercial zone or a heavy industrial zone for
Right.
usage. So we do, yes, they have an assessment that is done. Yeah, the answer to that is yes.
Mr. Narayan, any
But
follow-up
as I
quickly? I
but
want, yeah.
but
Yes.
as I want to say, somebody who may have current disruption may say, well, I'm not seeing the feeling that effect where I said yes, but you're not feeling effect. The reason being, as I said, because there's a gap that we're trying to fill, and we were behind in time in terms of ensuring that water, potable water, is delivered to every household and delivered in a treated way. We were behind in that regard, and that is what the gap we're trying to fill.
Yeah.
Dr. Narayan, follow-up?
My follow-up question is that in terms of Guyana's development and the country's trend toward modernization, that many people it, it it presents itself for contamination of water because many people, they go out there and they have their own septic, and being in the low area, it overflows. It can cause all kinds of issues. Are there policies in place to ensure that such kind of occurrences are rare, or so that are preventable for
So
water contamination especially?
yeah, so if we talk about even with sewer, we have two types of system. Georgetown has a sewer system, and the rest
Yes.
of the country and just outside of Georgetown is all septic tank related. So for the Georgetown aspect, which we're getting to, because we have to talk about the wastewater treatment, the sanitation wastewater treatment. We do not have a plant. That's a fact. We're currently conducting the assessment because, as I said, we're doing so many things. But yet, this, if you're talking about a modern country, you're talking a country that is transformed. You cannot talk about transformation without not speaking about how do we treat wastewater, right? And
Yes.
of course, the
Mhm.
disposal that we have now, well, way before, well, since I've been born and before, the disposal towards the ocean, that still exists.
Yes.
So, as a government, we have a plan to address this. So what we did though, we started with a prioritization for the treatment, and then we're coming to this. But we do have the necessary surveys and studies that are being done to move in the direction of then moving this into a project oriented, to have this funded to develop a waste treatment plant for Georgetown. In terms of the individual, the isolated households, so outside of Georgetown, which we're using septic tank uh, drainage, yeah, you can only use a lot of education, to educate persons too. And then this, what you're talking about, is also relevant to a lot of squatting areas where there is not a proper facility that is placed there. So we do have programs in this regard that we work in those areas so that they can construct at least properly a proper outdoor washroom facility with a septic tank, because you're vulnerable in that regard. Yeah, yes, we are paying attention with respect to preventing any kind of contamination, etc.
Thank you. Not sure if Shamiza here, but in the interest of time, I wanted to turn it over to her to take a few questions from our audience. But I think we lost her for a moment. So, Minister, you spoke. Your ministry is very comprehensive. Shamiza here, forgive me. So I'll allow her to ask from the audience a couple of questions. Shamiza, we can't hear you.
She's speaking, but we're not hearing.
All right. Sorry about that. So I lost all my questions there, but I know one of the questions that one of the viewer was asking has to do with squatting. And so the question is, how does your ministry handle squatting?
All right. So I spoke. I think I spoke about that earlier, but let me repeat. I cannot tell you how we handle squatting without saying, first of all, we are not recognizing any new squatting. So what you find happens sometimes is that there are new persons who come and squat in a particular land, and with the perception, I say perception, thinking that yes, they will be able to be addressed and bypassed from the system because we have an application system. We have thousands of persons who are waiting, who have done the right thing, and they are awaiting. But yet you have some person who think that he can come and bully the system. But that's that. Having gotten that out of the way, we have a department substantively set up for this, and this is called the Community Development Department. And the squatting, as I said, has been there from ever since. But we now we have an aggressive program to address squatting, though. Look, when we got in 2020, there were about 21 squatting areas that we inherited. We checked, we got about 21. By 2023, we have regularized maybe about 13 of those. So we have on stream this year about 8 areas to be regularized. Anyone else who is on the sea dam, the river banks, etc., um, those are no zone. So those are persons that have to move. But again, we have been asking persons if they see any new person who any new um, structure going up, report it to our enforcement department or our community development department, and we're addressing because we're dismantling. So sometimes, as I said, you do have what is called the attempt for bullyism. So what do I mean? A couple of weeks ago, we had a protest right here, and it's for an area that bordered between Ogle to Cummings Lodge, our new housing area. But that wasn't a dam, a reserve dam, that a number of persons started to construct shacks or whatever building, and we send the crew to break it down. But then they come back, and then you hear the big cry about humanitarian, etc. There's a right and there's a wrong way. Well, if there's a right, there obviously is a wrong way in when you're going about doing things. And squatting is not the right way. But yes, you have a compassionate government, you have a caring government, you have a government that also understand the plights of some citizens, but then there are also wickedness in some regard. I say that with no apology. So I'll give you another example. Right now, we are in a project to remove over 300, listen this, over 300 squatting houses or occupants in along between maybe to Hurston going all the way up to Friendship. That's on the riverbank, the Demerara Riverbank. As a project, the president had visited and he had given a mandate to move all those persons. We have engaged them. We have done the necessary. We've shown them how do you become part of the housing program. Therefore, you have to go through the right process of applying. And when you do examine some of those persons, they were allocated, but they chose to live there. And then wherever they were allocated, they rented out or whatever the land that they would have gotten. So as I said, not all persons that you see squatting is really that they are that desperate and can't help it. They do have in between, some persons of dire need, but they can't help themselves or can't rent somewhere until they're addressed. So yes, we're addressing squatting in an aggressive way, and we're stepping that up by the way. But some of the areas that you see we regularize means that we have taken a decision that the land that is there, the persons can stay on that land, but you can't be a squatter. And if we're regularizing, and you already have been allocated on another government or another or own another property, you will not be allowed to be part of that regularization because you can't double dip. So you do have some of that in that regard.
Thank
Shanice,
you.
a second question? Do you have a second question?
Yes, I do. You spoke briefly about bribery and how your ministry will not tolerate it. How does your ministry tackle bribery and corruption?
So okay, so I addressed this, but let me repeat. There are different. If an allegation comes, we investigate. There's sometimes what I see a lot of time persons, right? They said, "Oh, I'm being hassled," but sometimes there are persons who come with special requests, and when they don't get what they're looking for, then you hear you're being hassled. So we investigate this. But I'm saying this: you don't have to bring it to the attention to us. We're the rightful authority to bring us for us to address it. But you don't have to. If you once you know a bribery has taken place, then it's an illegal activity. Please report that to this competent authority, and the competent authority is the Guyana Police Force. And they have been acting. They have been cases that they have been able to prosecute on. They have. You have had recent cases in that regard. But in some cases, the matter die a natural death because in order for police to move forward, they need statement. You can't work on hearsay. They have to get statement, and this is where we're lacking in that regard. So you can't just say I hear, but you have to give a statement substantiate the allegations, and that is part of what we're having challenges. But absolutely not, because I mean, I had a big ministry. I had a ministry that is constantly under the radar in every move we make, in the sense of every beneficiary that we address every day, we are making the life of somebody better. But there are challenges that we're confronted every day sometimes, because many times the issues people bring to you are not necessarily they're being truthful, and you have to investigate and you find it's something else, or they're finding a backdoor way of claiming otherwise. That there's like a new thing I see now where persons are claiming, oh yes, we are separated. So that is why we have a 3-year loop time period for anyone who has to come back into the system, because there are checks and balances in how you have to do this. But it's not a matter that I personally bury under the carpet. We hit it head on. But there, I am aware the persons say a lot of things out there, but what let once you get the necessary evidence to do so, then we move forward. We can't just work on allegations alone. We take allegations serious in the sense that we try to run with it, but then if it meets a wall because you don't have something to work with.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We will
Let me
now go
let me
ahead.
let me just ask Dr. Narayan quickly a follow up. I know this is an area he's very interested in, so I'll just ask him to share a final thought, and then Shamiz, I'll have a quick comment
Yeah,
before we come back to Minister.
water supply is crucial in the development of agriculture, but agriculture also contributes to the pollution of water through the use of pesticides. What relational aspects are there for the agriculture ministry and your ministry to have cooperative venture to ensure that pollutants are limited and that water supply is at its best?
So first of all, the majority of we have a close working relationship with Ministry of Agriculture and DNI, because drainage is also all the work we do. We also have drainage as a major aspect to ensure that we're doing the right thing, catering for drainage irrigation. But the majority of the source of water is really well water. So it's coming from underground, not from like like shelter belt shelter belt, for example, is getting from what all of us know as a blacker. So that's a different that you can use as an example where you're getting water that can be maybe contaminated, but it's not, because it's treated. The water that goes through shelter belt is treated. you see the water, it looks black from before it comes in, but you see what you get to the household. So those air water are all well type water. We don't have on the coastland. There's except shelter belt, we do not have any other source of water that goes to the household except for like the Hope Light Canal, what we're going to attempt now, because that is freshwater source. So that will bring that kind of discussion when that comes on stream. But just the shelter belt, I'm aware that we take the open or freshwater source to be generated for potable water.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, you spoke, this is as you said, your ministry is very comprehensive, and this topic can go on for hours. But to highlight from your conversation, you point us in an area where the housing sector achievement has achieved almost 31,000 plus household or allocation over the period, and you're looking to complete 7 water treatment plants by the year end. So these are notable achievements, and it's in alignment with the manifesto. So I want to commend you and your ministry for its assiduous work, and we wish you all success ahead. But I'll turn it back to Shamiza to ask for closing and final remarks.
But
Thank
before you go quickly, I'm not sure how many time I have left. But talking about water, because it's becoming much more topical, and only last Friday, if I recall, the 22nd, we celebrated World Water Day. Now, more than ever, especially here in Guyana, the householders are understanding the precious commodity called water. We take for granted that water that's coming through the taps, and we think it's infinity. And now with the prolonged dry season, they're seeing that effect. And so we do have a high level of wastage too in the system, and we have been working to reduce our water losses. So right now, our we call it non-revenue water. So non-revenue water is maybe about 6 to 1 to 62% non-revenue water. That's how much is in the system. We are things we're putting in stream that by next year we want to reduce this to about 55%. But they have a lot of water that is generated that is not accounted for. But it's an overhead cost to generate the water because you have to treat it, or if it's going through an electronic system of pumping the water. So that is something I want our listeners to understand too, that it's not just about only education, and we are working with the children too, because children have this way of whatever you tell them, whatever the teachers say to them, they come home and repeat it and say, my teacher said X, Y, Z. So just like how you say, do not litter. And if you drop any sweetie paper, they will upbraid you. And so it's a similar scenario we're working with. But climate change, though, we are grappling too with climate change because predictability of weather patterns obviously poses a challenge. And with a lot of riverine areas that they depend on those water for access, now they understand the effect. So we have a robust program to drill a number of wells, but again, there's only so much we can do at the same time, but not lack of resources, but simply it's a lot of work that is being done.
Thank you, Shamiza.
I know we said we're closing off, but Mr. Feroz Khan has asked if he knows that you're overloaded with all the development throughout Ghana, full support for that. But can you say when you'll be able to regulate the housing scheme in Madia?
It's coincidentally that you asked about Madia.
Madia.
Yes, no, I will answer you definitively. Only today, myself and Minister Sukai, we were speaking about Madia because she has political responsibility for that region. I am going to Madia with the housing team in under 2 weeks. So that will be my answer to address the Madia area, that Madia housing scheme area that the person is referring to.
And then we have another question. What is the contact number for the department handling squatters? I'm assuming that's on your page.
So what what I'm doing now, yes. So so let me for me to answer you. We have been receiving complaints sometimes. Persons say they are not getting onto housing. I get their inbox, and sometimes they call me. They said it's easier to get onto the minister's office and get through to the department. So it's something we're looking at and addressing, because A lot of persons are calling. So we are reworking the line. So sometime next week, we'll publish the schedule, the departments that can be, the various departments that can be contacted, and the both external number as well as from the switchboard number. But the squatting department, I know it's 227-4168 or 632-1972. But we will be publishing for all departments. We have one that is for the ministry switchboard and the regional offices. But then you have other departments that are here that we want to publicize. So that they're currently working on it, because we're putting dedicated extensions, external extensions for persons who are calling external, so that they can get on to the individual departments. Not necessarily that you just have to talk to an operator.
Perfect. Thank you, Minister. We will now ask for your closing remarks.
Oh, sure. Let me say it's a pleasure to be on your program. I didn't realize an hour ran up so quickly. So my closing remark would be, of course, to wish all of your listeners a happy Easter. Certainly, time normally flies when you're busy, and same goes for us in government. So we're dawning upon 2025 already, because you have to say we practically complete the first quarter, and we only celebrated New Year a few mornings ago. So we're working assiduously to fulfill all our mandate. We have a manifesto commitment that we're working towards. So whatever we say to the population is what you will get, and that's why it's very easy for us to come and speak on any topic, because our message is consistent. And so to our listeners, they can continue to see a government that works hard every day to bring betterment for citizens, and bring betterment for even for those in the diaspora who are asking about coming back. I know a lot of persons have been saying that they've seen the changes that have happened, and they want to come back and even help or serve. A lot has been asking, for example, in the medical profession, because they have these experience, and they want to come and provide some of the exposure to persons here. So we will continue to serve our people. We'll continue to deliver our mandate for both housing and water. Housing, to ensure that we have home ownership, to ensure persons have an opportunity to have access to their land. 31,000 is not any easy number. And I'm saying 31,000, knowing that for 5 years between 2015 to 2020, you just had 7,534 allocations. And of that 7,534, half of those, the infrastructure work was not done. So we actually did the infrastructure work for those persons allocated then. So you'll understand 50,000 then is not idle number. It's not an idle number. It's a commitment by your government, billions of dollars. This year, the ministry on our budget is about $100 billion. And that will tell you how much is coming to a sector of a 1.14 trillion budget. So now you'll understand how important is the housing and water sector for this government. And we're competing with other sectors. So certainly it's a pleasure to be on your program, and I'm always available to answer any question that you may have.
It's always a pleasure listening to you on the Guyana Dialogue. To our entire panel, thank you so much. To our viewers, thank you. It was truly a pleasure being here with you this evening. A very blessed Easter to all. Until next time, I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.